Hey guys, this is Jan for Chess24, and in this video I'm going to take a look at a game between Alexander Moiseenko and Lu Shanglei. Now you might not be familiar with these players, but they are both very strong grandmasters. They faced each other in the first round of the Chess World Cup, one of the strongest tournaments of the year, a knockout tournament with 128 players from all over the world, featuring pretty much all the superstars except for Magnus Carlsen and Vishy Anand. Moiseenko and Lu Shanglei more in the middle of the pack, but they both have quite some individual achievements. Alexander Moiseenko is a stable 2700 player, a former European individual champion, former Olympic champion with Ukraine, and he outrates his opponent Lu Shanglei by more than 100 points, but that can be a little deceiving, I believe, because Lu Shanglei is one of the up-and-coming Chinese youngsters whose rating might not have caught up to his playing strength. He's a former world junior champion under 20. He's also an expert blitz player. He's actually the only one who defeated Magnus Carlsen in last year's World Blitz Chess Championship. So he is a force to be reckoned with, and he actually did win their first game. This is the second game of their first round match. Alexander Moiseenko is in a must-win situation. If he fails to win this game, he is out of the tournament. It's 2 game matches, and if you do lose 1.5-1/2, that's it. So he has to win the game to equalize the score, and he goes for the move 1d4. Lu Shanglei goes for d5 to c4. So far so good. Queen's Gambit, e6, knight to c3. And here the Chinese player chooses a very rare move, the move d takes c4. This is a lot more common one move earlier after d4, d5, c4. The move d takes c4, the Queen's Gambit accepted, is very viable. But if white were to play knight c3 here, black would never go e6, or most likely he wouldn't. In fact, he would go e5, which is a good move against knight c3. And if white were to play e4, then black has many options, but once again, e6 does not quite make the list. So this is a very rare sideline, and I believe it's rare for a reason. White plays the natural move e4, occupies the center, makes sure he wins his pawn back. This pawn can't be defended. But of course Lu Shanglei knew all this. He played the move c5, and he actually played this position before, quite surprisingly, because it's really a rare line. And I'm not sure it's a clever choice to repeat a line you already played in the World Cup, because here, unlike in normal tournaments, the players have known the pairings for about a month, so they've had plenty of time to prepare for each other. Therefore, yeah, I'm not sure about his opening choice in this one. White goes d5, the critical move, knight f3 is possible, but carries a lot less venom after c takes d4. The pawn structure will be more or less symmetrical after white takes both these pawns, and black should be alright. So d5 is critical, grabbing space in the center. Lu Shanglei plays the move a6, preparing to meet bishop takes c4 with b5, gaining some space on the queen side. And in most games, this line is not very popular, so there's few games, but more often than not, white has stopped this here, playing a4. This is actually a former game by Lu Shanglei, which I mentioned. Knight f6 was played there, bishop c4, e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight d5, bishop d5, and white was a little better. Lu Shanglei went on to lose this game against Li. But he apparently had an improvement, or didn't mind his position there, so he goes into this line again, and Moiseenko plays the most natural move, arguably, just recaptures the pawn with bishop takes c4. Black goes b5, trying to gain some space on the queen side. Bishop b3 is normal. Knight to f6, which is already a novelty, believe it or not. After 7 moves in a game between 2 very strong grandmasters, we have a position which has never occurred before, at least according to my database. Goes to show you that, first of all, chess is rich in possibilities, but secondly, that the line black played really is not very popular. Knight to f3 is very, very logical, continuing development and preparing to castle. Black played c4, which he has to do sooner or later, rather sooner than later, to cripple this very strong c4 bishop. Not cripple it, b3 bishop, I'm sorry. Not cripple it, but chase it away from this diagonal. Bishop c2, queen c7. Logical move, stepping out of all kinds of trickery with d6 and d takes e6. And short castles. Here I was a bit confused. As I said, this position has never been played before, but it did look very familiar to me. But then it occurred to me why that is. It's a position that's very, very similar to a theoretical main line. If we play the move c6 here, knight f3, knight f6, the semi-Slav, e3, knight bd7, bishop d3. This is a line I've played myself a lot. d takes c, bishop c5, b5. Bear with me here. a6, e4, c5, d5. Completely different move order. But let's say c4 here, bishop c2, queen to c7, and short castles. We have a theoretical main line and almost the same position, but only almost. Here black has an extra tempo. His knight is already on d7 and it's black to move. And if we compare that to the position that occurs in the game, which is this one, here it's black to move, but his knight is still on b8. So that shows you that black's opening choice can't be very good. If you get a theoretical mainline, very sharp position, a tempo down, something has gone wrong. To explain why he's a tempo down, it's basically because in the Maran, the line I just showed you, white first plays bishop d3 and then he captures on c4, so he makes one more move with the bishop. They both save the move by going e4 in one go and c5 in one go, but the extra bishop move makes a difference. Long story short, the opening did not end up well for Lu Shanglei. He's worse here and he does the best thing he can do given the circumstances. He tries to keep the position closed, plays the move e5, which is a structure that occurs sometimes in these semi-Slav lines, and there normally it's considered to be advantageous for white, and I don't see a reason why this should be different here. White is a protected passed pawn on d5, which at the moment is not dangerous, but it can become dangerous later on, and it does secure white a very nice space advantage. Black has some space on the queen side, but he's in danger of being undermined here with moves like a4, b3, or b4, followed by a4, an idea I quite like in main lines. And white also has the option of playing on the king side. The space advantage makes it easier for him to maneuver, so white is better here. Moiseenko goes for this very plan I just showed with knight to e2. I think he had an even stronger option, or maybe some even stronger options. One move I really like is the move bishop d2 here, which looks humble, but it has a very subtle point, which is after knight bd7, white plays the move b4. This might look strange, giving black a protected passed pawn as well, but has the idea of following up with a4 and breaking up the black queen side, and also restricting the black pieces, not allowing them to access the c5 square. Tactical point is after bishop takes b4, white as knight takes b5, and more or less a winning position after a takes b, bishop takes b4. So there were some tempting choices after e5. Moiseenko decided to reshuffle his knight immediately, went knight e2, knight bd7 is logical, and here, to my slight surprise, he doesn't go knight g3, which it looks like this was the idea of his last move. Probably he disliked the move g6 then, kind of crippling the knight on g3 and not allowing it to jump anywhere good. So he tries to make sure that doesn't happen, and after knight bd7 plays a sneaky move, bishop to g5. The main idea of this move is to provoke black to go h6, when after h6 it's not going to be so easy anymore to play g6, because there's some extra targets with the weakness on h6. And Lu Shanglei does bite, he does play h6. I'm not sure he had to move like bishop d6 in order to meet knight g3 with g6 again. Does look quite possible. He plays h6, chasing the bishop away. Of course the bishop did not want to exchange itself. It does go back to d2, and mission accomplished, h6 has been provoked. Bishop d6, knight to g3, here comes the knight, planning to jump into f5. And once again, I'm slightly surprised Lu Shanglei allows this, he just castles. It was still possible to play g6, it's less comfortable here than with the pawn on h7 in the position we saw earlier, because this is an extra target, but I still believe it might have been the lesser evil. However, it's not so easy for black to castle with his pawn on h6, and there are some targets here, so I do sort of understand he disliked it. Black just played castle, the knight jumped into f5, of course that was the point of all this maneuvering, and f5 is always a very nice square for such a knight. There's already some ideas sometimes with bishop takes h6, followed by queen d2 and queen takes h6, and white can also slowly try to build an attack around this knight, not even mentioning the option of capturing the black bishop. Lu Shanglei plays rook to e8, planning to redistrict the bishop to f8 to give extra shelter to the weak g7 and h6 spots. And here, me being the bishop pair fetishist that I am, I'd have been very, very tempted to go knight takes d6. which, yeah, I'm not quite sure why he didn't do it. Probably he enjoyed his knight on f5 too much. But I believe after knight d6, queen d6, and any move really, let's say queen e2, white enjoys a very pleasant long-term advantage with his two bishops. He still has the option of playing on the king side or on the queen side with b3, a4, breaking up the black pawn formation there. So this does look tempting to me, but Moiseenko, in a must-win situation, decides to play more sharply, goes for the move knight 3 h4, now really threatening to take, followed by knight f5, also clearing the way for the queen to get to the king side, and for the f-pawn to open the position even further. Knight h4, of course now black goes bishop f8, not allowing knight takes d6, followed by knight f5, and with bishop f8 he's sometimes keeping the option of kicking the knights out with g6 or g5. Moiseenko plays king h1, a non-committal move, preparing f4 in many lines. There it makes a lot of sense to leave this diagonal, not to run into any unpleasantness. So king h1, a good half-waiting move, indicating he wants to follow up with f4. And this, believe it or not, is, in my opinion, the most critical position of the game, where Shanglei decided to go for an extremely sharp move that's going to determine the rest of the game, the course of the game. He went for the move g5, which I think, to me, it might not even have occurred to go g5, weaken your king side like that, and leaving this knight on f5, but also goes to show that he doesn't know any prejudice and considers such moves, and should white just go knight to f3 here, I believe black's play would have been fully justified. He goes knight c5, attacks this pawn, also threatening to play bishop takes f5. White would have nothing better than retreating the other knight as well. And after knight to g3, well, clearly the last maneuvers haven't been a big success, so probably black could be quite happy here. I still believe that g5 is too much, and Moiseenko finds a very interesting way to challenge that move. Instead, black could have just played knight to c5, logical, occupying the best square for the knight. Queen to f3 is, I guess, what bothered him, threatening knight takes h6 check. But after the quiet queen d8, just protecting the knight on f6, thereby stopping the threat, it looks like black is doing alright. Now he can follow up with g6 or g5 in many lines, and it's not completely obvious how white plans to continue his attack here. So that kind of calls into question the white maneuver as well, this knight 3 h4 and king h1, because it looks like after knight c5 black would have had a fine position. Didn't happen, and probably I wouldn't have shown you this game had it happened. So he played g5, and that ran into a very interesting piece sacrifice by Alexander Moiseenko. He gives up a whole knight on h6, knight takes h6 check, bishop h6 and knight f5, making sure he keeps at least one knight, or he keeps one knight on f5, which can't be challenged by a pawn anymore. Black has nothing better than retreating with the bishop f8. If king h7, for example, h4 is very strong, opening up the king side. Can't really do that. So the bishop has to retreat. White goes bishop takes g5. Now he has two pawns for the piece, a fully exposed black king, and a lot of attacking options. The queen can switch over easily. f4 is still in the air. Rook e1, rook e3 are ideas. This position strikes me as very hard to play in practice. Note that I'm not saying it's bad objectively. The computer still says queen b6 here and sort of manages to defend, even though I must admit I haven't checked it that deeply. I wouldn't be surprised if white manages to crash through here with f4. But the computer says knight h7, and he does not see any immediate danger at the very least. Instead, Shanglei played the quite natural move knight h7 immediately, attempting to get rid of this bishop on g5. But there is a problem that now the white queen gets access to some new squares on g4 and h5, and Moiseenko makes very good use of that. Plays queen g4, threatening checkmate with bishop f6. Bishop f6 would be checkmate in 2. King to h8 is forced. If you took this bishop, let's say knight g5, queen g5, king h8, then this plan of bringing the rook is just deadly. Here, rook to ae1, tending very simply to go rook e3, rook g3, and give checkmate. Nothing you can do about that. So the bishop has to be left alive. King h8 only move, and the queen now they accomplish his mission on g4, moves one step further, goes to h5, pins this knight and targets the pawn on f7, while still keeping the idea of rook e3, rook e1, rook e3, rook h3 in mind, which would be devastating. Very difficult position for Liu Shanglei, and he decides to give back some material to ease the pressure, plays the move f6 here. I've checked the position a little bit, I could not really find anything better. If, I don't know, black goes, let's say, bishop to b7 and white already has a wealth of tempting options. d6 is a very strong move according to the computer. Rook a d1 looks like a good move, and the move rook a e1 is also quite tempting to once again bring this rook, and after f6 you just go bishop d2, and even this position, oh, too many arrows, I'm sorry, seems to be indefensible for black. So we can't criticize Liu Shanglei for going f6, trying to simplify, but it does cost material. This rook is on prise and Moiseenko grabs it. Retreating the bishop was also an option, just keeping the pluses, but Moiseenko has correctly evaluated that this position is good for him. And one big reason is that after f takes g, he has a nice little move, the move d6, which, yeah, not only attacks the queen, but also brings this pawn closer to the coronation square, which can be very useful. Not only d7, but also mainlines knight to e7, and if that knight has to be captured, d takes e7, this pawn will really turn out to be a powerhouse. d6, very unpleasant move. Black queen doesn't have any better square than c6. If it goes somewhere else, I don't know, queen b8 for example, then white has many very strong options as well. Rook a d1 and tending knight e7 is given as very good by the computer. So queen to c6, rook a d1 played anyway. Might look strange at first sight, this rook e1, rook e3 was the plan I talked about earlier, which looks quite tempting here as well. But now with the pawn on d6, rook a d1 is a very good move. Overprotecting it and finding useful work on the d file, mainly threatening knight e7. When this pawn is protected and after d e7, you can already see the impact this rook would have. So very cool play by Moiseenko. He just goes d6, rook a d1, and rightly judged that his forces are just too active. This combination of the knight on f5, the pawn on d6, and the queen on e8, someone manages to battle successfully with the entire black army. Bishop b7 kicks the queen out of e8, but it has another nice square, f7, where surprisingly in the middle of black's camp it can't be attacked or bothered at all, which is often a good sign for domination of a position. Knight df6 was played. It's hard to find constructive moves here. I've tried to find some others, and one line I was quite impressed with. Knight c5 looked like a very useful move, logical move, attacking b4, e4, trying to coordinate the pieces, but here white has an incredibly strong move, b4. It turns out there's no defense for black. Knight takes e4 is one cute line, bishop takes, queen takes, threatening checkmate, but just f3. The queen has to go back, queen to c6. Now this d6 pawn has been unchained and it does advance to d7, threatening d8. So far so good. Rook d8, and here I'm not sure if Moiseenko calculated all this, but I think it's possible. He's a very good, very strong calculator. White has rook to d6, the final touch. The point is that bishop d6 runs into queen g7 checkmate, and if the black queen retreats, queen c7, this rook has sneakily invaded the black camp. Rook to g6, threatening rook g8 checkmate, and mate is near. Imminent? Let's say imminent. So knight c5 did not help. One more line after knight c5, just because I enjoy these lines, is c takes b3, bishop takes b3, knight takes b3, a takes b3. Turns out white didn't really need this bishop, he just needed to exchange the c5 knight to once again allow his pawn to advance, and here rook d8 trying to fight against this pawn. Then knight to e7 is decisive with the threat of knight g6 checkmate, queen g8 checkmate, so it has to be captured, takes, and once again white wins. So knight c5 didn't help. Knight df6 is the move played, where at least it can't be attacked with b4, but now we see the other idea, or one of the main ideas of white's previous setup. Knight e7, he's willing to exchange his powerful knight to help his d-pawn, Delroy, let's call him Delroy, as Jonathan Rowson used, to advance even further. Once again, the threat is knight g6 checkmate, so it has to be captured. Bishop e7, d7, and now we see the point of rook d1. It's looming large on the d file. Rook d8 check is a very, very unpleasant threat, and not much black can do about it. I've checked some moves here as well. Queen e8 is the first move that came to my mind, but that runs into rook d8, a little tactic, takes, pawn takes, and queen takes b7, and all of a sudden white has a decisive material advantage and is bound to win this game. Shanglei went for rook to g8, rook e8, rook d8, wouldn't change things, trying to, well, organize his defenses, but the white position is too strong. Rook to d8, once again carrying some heavy threats like rook takes g8 followed by e8 queen. You have to stop that, go knight to e8, and now the last reserves are brought into the game. Rook fd1, this rook was sort of dormant, but it introduces new threats like rook 1 to d6, and yeah, black's position is hopeless. Some cute lines here, for example, queen f6, attempting to exchange queens, runs into queen takes e8, rook takes e8, rook e8, king g7, rook g8, king g8, e8 queen, and once again white has a decisive material advantage. He's going to pick up this bishop probably sooner or later as well, but he's already enough material up to win the game. So nothing works for black. Shanglei tried to move bishop to c8, attempting to bring this bishop to e6, kick the white queen out, but no such luck. White already has two ways to finish the game here. One would be the move I mentioned earlier, the move rook 1 to d6, which is decisive. I guess he did not like it because of queen takes d6. If knight takes queen g8, it's checkmate. Queen takes d6 he might have disliked, but here white also wins easily with rook takes e8, rook takes e8, queen takes e8 check, king g7, and queen d8, the last subtlety. Turns out this pawn can't be stopped. It's gonna become a whole queen. So rook 1 d6 would have won, but Moiseenko finds another way, which once again I'm not sure I would have thought of. The move queen to d5, offering the exchange of queens, which sometimes is something you would ignore after you've been sacrificing material and attacking the whole game, but it is an absolutely devastating move as well. There's nothing black can do. If black takes here, e takes d5, and he can add the new d pawn to his list of worries. For example, let's say bishop g4, f3, bishop h5, d6. This pawn just decides the game by advancing to d7. So you cannot exchange queens after queen d5. Instead, Shanglei tried to move queen to c7, but now the queen continues his tour across the board, goes to the corner, queen to a8, and that finally overstretches black's defenses completely. Nothing you can do. Bishop b7, once again this little trick. Rook takes e8, bishop a8, rook g8, king g8, e8, queen check, knight f8, and queen takes a8 with a decisive material advantage. It's a whole rook. Can't do that, and if the bishop goes somewhere else, well, bishop g4, anything wins really, but the cleanest is rook takes e8, and game over because of the threat rook g8 checkmate. There's no time to take on d1. Nothing black can do. Queen e7 also just leads to a win by material advantage and position after queen takes c8. So after queen to a8, Shanglei had seen enough and resigned here, which means Moiseenko equalize the match. It's 1-1, and the players will face each other in the tie breaks with less time to think. It's two rapid games, I believe, with, I don't know, 25 minutes and 10 seconds per move, and then if it's still 1-1, it's two blitz games, and so on and so forth. So there's gonna be a lot of action. Shanglei, let's not forget, a very strong blitz player, defeated Magnus Carlsen. I'm sure we will still hear from him, but for now Moiseenko must have been very happy to have survived and to have a chance to stay in this tournament. The key moment of the game, I believe, arrived quite early, except for the opening, which I think was dubious how Shanglei handled it, but it wasn't decisive. After king h1, the move g5 really provoked this white attack, which turned out to be too much to handle after knight takes h6. Had he gone knight c5, who knows what would have happened. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the game. I hope you enjoyed the World Chess Cup. It's still gonna go on forever till October 5th. Check it out on chess24.com. All games are live broadcasted, commentary in many languages. I'm trying to do commentary in Spanish. Not really my first or second language, but we're still having fun. So join us on chess24.com, and thank you for watching this video. Till the next one. Bye bye.